Hello, Capricorn. So I just sat down with my tarot deck because I kept getting this really strong pull to do a reading specifically about something we all struggle with. You know what I am talking about? That part of ourselves we just do not want to look at. The shadow self. The aspects we push down, ignore, maybe even pretend do not exist because honestly, facing them feels too uncomfortable or too vulnerable. And listen, I get it. As Capricorns, we are known for being strong, disciplined, having everything together. We are the ones people come to for advice, for structure, for that steady presence. But what happens to the parts of us that do not fit that image? What about the messines, the fears, the needs we tell ourselves we should not have? So I shuffled my deck with this intention. Show me what Capricorn needs to see about their shadow self. What are they avoiding? What truth is sitting right there waiting to be acknowledged? And wow, what came through was really something. Not scary, but definitely eye-opening in that way where you realize you have been carrying something heavy without even knowing it. Before we get into the cards, I just want to say this is not about judgment. This is about awareness. This is about understanding yourself more fully so you can actually move forward in a healthier way. Because here is the thing, when we refuse to look at our shadow, it does not just disappear. It shows up in other ways. In our relationships, in our work, in those patterns we keep repeating and wondering why things never change. All right. Let me pull the first card and see what comes through. Okay, so the first card I pulled is the High Priestess, and honestly, when this card showed up, I had to pause for a second because the energy here is so specific. The High Priestess is all about intuition, about inner knowing, about the wisdom that exists beneath the surface. But here is what struck me immediately. For Capricorn, this card in the context of shadow work is pointing to something you actively suppress. Your intuitive side, your emotional intelligence, that gut feeling you get but then immediately rationalize away. Let me explain what I'm seeing here. Capricorn, you have been taught, maybe by society, maybe by your own experiences, that logic and practicality are what matter. Emotions are messy. Intuition is not reliable. You need facts, plans, tangible evidence before you make a move. And sure, that has served you well in a lot of ways. But the High Priestess is showing me that there is a whole part of you that gets completely ignored in that process. Think about the times you had a feeling about someone or something. That quiet inner voice that said, this does not feel right. Or maybe this person is not trustworthy, or this opportunity is not what it seems. But then what did you do? You probably told yourself you were being irrational. You looked for logical reasons to override that feeling. You convinced yourself that emotions should not factor into decisions. The shadow aspect here is that you have actually become disconnected from a huge source of wisdom. Your intuition is not the enemy of your logic, but you have treated it that way. You have created this internal split where anything that cannot be measured or proven gets pushed into the shadows. And here's the thing, that intuitive part of you does not just go away. It keeps trying to communicate with you through anxiety, through that nagging feeling you cannot explain, through dreams or physical sensations you ignore. What the High Priestess is asking you to acknowledge is that you are actually afraid of your own depth. You are afraid of what you might discover if you really listen to your inner voice. Because if you start trusting your intuition, that means letting go of some control. That means acknowledging there are things you cannot plan for or strategize your way through. That means being vulnerable to uncertainty. And vulnerability, that is the real shadow here, is it not? You have built such a strong exterior, such a capable image, that showing any kind of uncertainty or admitting you operate on feelings sometimes, that feels like weakness to you. So you bury it. You bury the intuitive, emotionally intelligent, deeply feeling part of yourself because it does not match the Capricorn brand of being unshakable and always in control. But I am seeing that this disconnection is actually costing you. In relationships, you might miss important emotional cues because you are too focused on the practical aspects. In your career, you might ignore opportunities that feel right but do not look right on paper. In your personal growth, you might keep hitting the same walls because you are only using half of your available wisdom. The invitation here is not to abandon your practical nature. It is to integrate both sides, to recognize that your intuition and your logic can work together, that acknowledging your depth and your emotions actually makes you stronger, not weaker. The high priestess is sitting there in your shadow saying, "Look at me, I am part of you too." And it is time to bring me into the light. Let me pull the second card, because I am feeling there is more to uncover here. Okay, the second card is Knight of Pentacles, and this is really interesting, because at first glance you might think this is very on brand for Capricorn. The Knight of Pentacles is steady, hardworking, methodical, reliable. All things Capricorns are known for. But remember, we are looking at shadow aspects, at what you refuse to acknowledge. So what is the shadow side of this energy? What I am seeing immediately is that this card is reflecting back your relationship with work and productivity. And the shadow part is not that you work hard, it is that you have made your worth entirely dependent on your productivity. You have become the Knight of Pentacles to such an extreme degree that you cannot even see where the work ends and you begin. Let me get specific here, because I think this is going to resonate. When was the last time you rested without feeling guilty? When was the last time you did something purely for enjoyment with no productive outcome? When was the last time you felt valuable just for existing, not for what you accomplished that day? The shadow the Knight of Pentacles is showing me is that you have internalized this belief, that you are only as good as your last achievement, that your value as a person is measured by your output. That rest is something you have to earn, not something you inherently deserve. And this is eating away at you in ways you probably do not even realize, because here is what happens when you operate from this shadow place. You burn out, but you push through anyway. You accomplish amazing things, but you cannot enjoy them because you are already focused on the next goal. You look at your life and it is full of achievements, but you still feel empty because you never learned how to just be. You only know how to do dot in the really insidious part. You probably judge others who do not operate this way. People who take breaks, who prioritize rest, who have work-life balance, maybe part of you sees them as lazy or undisciplined. That is your shadow talking. That is the part of you that has convinced you that your worth is conditional, projecting that belief onto everyone else. What you are refusing to acknowledge is that you are actually afraid to slow down. You are afraid that if you stop producing, stop achieving, stop being the dependable one who always delivers, people will see you do not have value. Or worse, you will see that about yourself. So you keep moving, keep working, keep grinding, because as long as you are in motion, you do not have to face that fear. The Knight of Pentacles in shadow is also showing me something about control. You believe that if you work hard enough, plan thoroughly enough, execute perfectly enough, you can control outcomes. You can guarantee success. You can protect yourself from failure or rejection or loss. But life does not work that way, does it? And every time something falls apart despite your best efforts, it chips away at this belief system. But instead of questioning the belief, you just decide you did not work hard enough. This is exhausting. This is unsustainable. And deep down, you know it. But acknowledging that means facing some really uncomfortable truths. It means admitting that your value is not about what you produce. It means accepting that some things are outside your control, no matter how hard you work. It means learning to rest and to be gentle with yourself even when you have not earned it by society's standards. The work here, and I know this is hard, is to start separating your identity from your productivity. To start questioning where this belief came from. Was it family expectations? Was it trying to prove yourself? Was it the only way you learned to receive love or approval? Because somewhere along the way, you learned that you were not enough just as you are. That you had to achieve to matter. And that lie has been running your life ever since. Let me see what the third card has to say because I feel like we are really getting into some deep territory. Here. All right, the third card is Two of Wands, and I feel like this is showing me another layer of the shadow we have been uncovering. The Two of Wands is about vision, planning, looking at possibilities, and deciding which path to take. It is that moment where you are standing at a crossroads with the world in your hands, considering your options. But here is the shadow aspect for Capricorn. You are so busy planning for the future that you are not actually living in the present. You are always 3 steps ahead, always thinking about what is next, always preparing for some future version of your life that will supposedly be better than what you have right now. What you refuse to acknowledge is that this is another form of avoidance. It is another way of not being present with yourself and your actual life. Because if you are always focused on the future, on the next goal, on what you are building toward, you do not have to deal with what is happening right now. You do not have to feel your current feelings or address your current needs or be present with your current relationships. I'm seeing this pattern where you tell yourself, once I achieve this thing, then I will relax. Once I get that promotion, then I will focus on my personal life. Once I reach this financial goal, then I will take that trip. Once I build this foundation, then I will pursue what I actually want. But that moment never comes, does it? Because as soon as you reach one milestone, you have already moved the goalpost to the next one. The Two of Wands in shadow is showing me that you are actually afraid of the present moment. You are afraid of what you might have to face if you stopped planning and strategizing long enough to just be where you are. Maybe you would have to acknowledge that you are lonely. Maybe you would have to feel the grief you have been avoiding. Maybe you would have to admit that the path you are on is not actually making you happy. It is just familiar. There is also something here about how you relate to possibilities. The Two of Wands represents choice, but I am seeing that you might actually be paralyzed by options. Not in an obvious way, but in a subtle way where you keep all your options open by never fully committing to any of them. You keep one foot out the door in relationships. You keep backup plans for your backup plans in your career. You stay in this perpetual state of preparation without ever fully diving in. And the shadow aspect is that this gives you the illusion of control while actually keeping you stuck. Because if you never fully commit, you never risk full failure. But you also never experience full success or full connection or full joy. You keep yourself in this middle zone that feels safe, but is actually just numb. What you are refusing to see is that your constant future focus is robbing you of your life. Your life is happening right now. Your relationships are happening right now. Your opportunities are happening right now. But you are so focused on what is coming next that you are missing what is actually here. I am also getting something about adventure and spontaneity. The Two of Wands can represent exploration. But your shadow version of this card is showing me that you have convinced yourself that everything needs to be planned. That spontaneity is irresponsible. That following your excitement or curiosity without a clear plan and outcome is foolish. So you have cut yourself off from a whole dimension of life experience. From serendipity, from magic, from the unexpected joys that come when you are not trying to control everything. The work with this card is about learning to be present, about making peace with now instead of constantly living in some future that never quite arrives, about recognizing that your life is not just the destination. It is also the journey. The fourth card is Queen of Pentacles, and okay. This is fascinating because on the surface, this seems like another very Capricorn energy card. The Queen of Pentacles is nurturing, abundant, practical, creates security and comfort. But we are looking at shadow, so let me tell you what I am seeing here that you might not want to hear. The shadow of the Queen of Pentacles for you is about how you give to others versus how you give to yourself. And specifically, I'm seeing this pattern where you are incredibly generous and nurturing to others, but you completely neglect yourself. You will make sure everyone else is taken care of. Everyone else has what they need. Everyone else is comfortable. But when it comes to your own needs, you have convinced yourself you do not have any, or that your needs are less important, or that taking care of yourself is selfish. Here is what you are refusing to acknowledge. You use caretaking as a way to avoid intimacy. By being the provider, the dependable one, the person who has it all together and can take care of everyone else, you create a role for yourself that keeps you safe from vulnerability. Because if you are the strong one, if you are the one everyone depends on, you never have to admit that you need support too. You never have to ask for help. You never have to reveal that underneath all that capability, you are human and you hurt and you need care just like everyone else. The Queen of Pentacles in shadow is also showing me something about control through caretaking. When you are the one providing, when you are the one making sure everyone has what they need, you get to control the dynamic. You get to be needed. And being needed feels safer than being wanted for who you truly are, does it not? Because if people need you for what you provide, you have some measure of control over whether they stay. But if people were to see the real you, the vulnerable you, the you that is not always strong and capable, what if they left? I am seeing this really painful pattern where you have learned to equate love with utility. You believe people value you for what you can do for them, not for who you are. So you keep performing, keep providing, keep being useful, because you are terrified to find out what would happen if you stopped. Would anyone still be there? Would anyone care about you if you were not taking care of them? And here is the shadow part you really do not want to look at. You have built resentment. Deep down, you are exhausted. You are tired of always being the strong one. You are tired of having your needs overlooked. You are tired of giving and giving while feeling empty inside. But you cannot acknowledge that resentment because it contradicts the image you have of yourself as the generous, nurturing, capable person. So you push it down. You tell yourself it is fine. You convince yourself that you do not need as much as other people. But the resentment is there, leaking out in small ways. In irritation, in withdrawal, in moments where you feel completely depleted and wonder why you feel so alone despite being surrounded by people who depend on you. The Queen of Pentacles is also about worthiness and self-value. And in shadow, this card is telling me you do not actually believe you are worthy of receiving. You can give endlessly, but receiving makes you deeply uncomfortable. When someone tries to take care of you or give to you, you deflect. You minimize. You immediately start thinking about how you need to reciprocate. You cannot just receive love or care or support without making it transactional. Because receiving without giving back makes you feel vulnerable and indebted. What you refuse to see is that this imbalance is damaging you. You cannot pour from an empty cup, but you have been trying to for so long that you do not even remember what it feels like to be full. You have normalized depletion. You have made exhaustion your baseline. And you call this strength, but it is not. It is actually a form of self-abandonment. The work here is recognizing that you deserve care too. Not because you have earned it through your productivity or your caretaking or your usefulness, but because you are a human being with needs and that is enough. You deserve rest. You deserve support. You deserve to have people show up for you the way you show up for them. And you deserve to nurture yourself with the same energy and attention you give to everyone else. This means learning to receive, learning to ask for help, learning to admit when you are not okay. Learning to set boundaries around your time and energy. The fifth card is judgment, and wow, okay, this is a big one. Judgment in tarot is about awakening, about seeing things clearly, about that moment of reckoning where you can no longer ignore the truth. It is about rebirth and transformation that comes from radical honesty with yourself. So what is the shadow aspect here for Capricorn? What truth are you being called to face that you have been avoiding? Based on everything that has come before, I'm seeing that judgment is asking you to acknowledge the way you have been living is not sustainable. The way you have constructed your life, your identity, Your relationships based on being strong and capable and productive and in control. It is actually slowly killing something essential in you. The shadow of judgment is that you know this already. Deep down, you know something has to change. You know you cannot keep going the way you have been going. You know the mask is getting heavier. You know the resentment is building. You know you are not happy even though by external measures you should be. You know there is a part of you that is dying from neglect while you focus all your energy on maintaining this image of having everything together. But here is what you refuse to acknowledge. Change is terrifying to you. The idea of deconstructing what you have built, of questioning the beliefs that have driven you, of admitting that maybe you have been wrong about some fundamental things that feels like death. And in a way it is. It is the death of the false self you have been presenting. It is the death of the coping mechanisms that have protected you, but also imprisoned you. It is the death of the story you have been telling yourself about who you are and what matters. Judgment is calling you to face yourself honestly, to look at the patterns we have uncovered through these cards and stop making excuses for them. To stop saying this is just how I am, or this is just what Capricorns do, or I will change when things settle down. Things will never settle down. You will always find a reason to avoid this reckoning if you want to. What I am seeing is that you have reached a point where the pain of staying the same is starting to outweigh the fear of change. Maybe you have had a wake-up call recently. Maybe a relationship ended. Maybe you had a health scare. Maybe you just looked at your life one day and realized you have been running on autopilot for years and you barely recognize yourself anymore. The shadow aspect of judgment is that you are judging yourself harshly for being human, for having needs, for having feelings, for not being perfect, for making mistakes, for struggling. You hold yourself to impossible standards and then punish yourself when you cannot meet them. And this harsh inner judge, this critical voice that tells you that you are not good enough, not strong enough, not disciplined enough, it has been driving you your whole life. But here is what judgment asks you to see. That critical voice is not helping you. It is not motivating you to be better. It is just making you miserable while you achieve things that do not actually fulfill you. Real transformation, real growth, real change does not come from self-punishment. It comes from self-compassion. It comes from looking at yourself with honesty but also with kindness. It comes from understanding why you develop these patterns and having compassion for the person who is just trying to survive. Judgment is also about forgiveness. Forgiving yourself for the ways you have abandoned yourself. Forgiving yourself for prioritizing everyone else's needs above your own. Forgiving yourself for hiding your true self because you were afraid. Forgiving yourself for all the times you were hard on yourself, when what you really needed was gentleness. This card is a wake-up call, Capricorn. It is asking you whether you are ready to do the work of integrating your shadow. Whether you are ready to stop running from the parts of yourself you have deemed unacceptable. Whether you are ready to build a life that is based on who you actually are, not who you think you should be. The final card is Strength, and I have to say, this feels like the perfect card to complete this reading. Because strength is not about the kind of strength you have been performing. It is not about pushing through, about never showing weakness, about controlling everything through sheer willpower. Real strength, the strength this card represents, is about something completely different. The Strength card shows a woman gently closing the mouth of a lion. She is not fighting it. She is not dominating it through force. She is working with it. She is approaching it with compassion and understanding. And that is the message for you, Capricorn. What you refuse to acknowledge is that real strength includes vulnerability. Real strength is being able to say, I am struggling and I need help. Real strength is setting boundaries even when people are disappointed. Real strength is choosing rest even when there is more work to be done. Real strength is showing up as your authentic self, even when it is scary. The shadow aspect here is that you have been performing a version of strength that is actually just rigidity. You have been so focused on never breaking that you have made yourself brittle. You have been so determined to never need anyone that you have isolated yourself. You have been so committed to maintaining control that you have cut yourself off from the flow of life. Strength is asking you to be gentle with yourself as you integrate these shadow aspects. To approach the wounded parts of yourself with compassion rather than criticism. To understand that the parts of you that you have been hiding, your need for connection, your intuitive wisdom, your vulnerability, your humanness, these are not weaknesses to overcome. They are essential parts of who you are that need to be integrated. This card is showing me that you have incredible inner strength that you have not even tapped into yet. But it requires a different approach than what you have been doing. It requires courage to be soft. Courage to admit you do not have all the answers. Courage to let people see you as you really are. Courage to stop performing and start being. I am also seeing that strength is about taming the inner critic we talked about with judgment. That harsh voice inside that drives you, that judges you, that tells you that you are never enough. You do not need to fight that voice or try to destroy it. You need to understand where it came from, have compassion for why it developed, and then gently but firmly let it know that it does not get to run your life anymore. The Strength card as your final message is really about self-acceptance, about looking at all the parts of yourself that this reading has revealed, the parts you have been hiding in shadow, and saying, I see you and you are welcome here. The part that needs rest, the part that wants to be nurtured, the part that feels deeply, the part that does not always have it together, the part that needs connection. All of it. All of you. This is the work, Capricorn. Not achieving more, not proving yourself, not perfecting yourself, just accepting yourself. Meeting yourself with the same compassion and understanding you so readily give to others. Building a life that honors your truth rather than one that maintains an image. And I know this probably feels overwhelming. You might be sitting there thinking, where do I even start? And that is okay. You do not have to transform everything overnight. This is a journey. Start small. Start by noticing when you are operating from shadow. Notice when you are pushing down your intuition. Notice when you are deriving your worth from your productivity. Notice when you are future tripping instead of being present. Notice when you are caretaking to avoid vulnerability. Just notice. Awareness is the first step. Then start experimenting with doing things differently. Rest without guilt. Share something vulnerable with someone you trust. Make a decision based on how it feels rather than how it looks on paper.